Lee says it will get much colder across the state tonight, making for a blustery Thanksgiving, but expect a rapid warm-up on Friday and Saturday. He says that'll make for uneventful weather on Sunday as many travelers come home from the Thanksgiving holiday. Governor Terry Branstad will have to answer questions under oath about his administration's treatment of a gay former state administrator. The governor will be deposed today by an attorney for Chris Godfrey. Godfrey has filed a lawsuit against Branstad and aides, alleging he was singled out for harsh treatment because he's openly gay. As the harvest is nearly complete across Iowa, many food banks in the state are reaping the benefits of what farmers have grown. With commodity prices so low, Iowa Agriculture Secretary Bill Northey says he's encouraged so many farmers are choosing to donate some of their bounty to those in need.
They're able to donate that to a qualified food receiving agency, a food bank, and be able to get a tax credit of 15% of the value of that food that they produce. So it's a great way to encourage that connection, certainly encourage the use of that local produced food.
Northey says it translates to a double benefit as farmers get a credit on their state taxes while local food banks get homegrown food. A Winterset High School senior will be presented a Citizen Hero Award during the Ivy Heroes game on Friday. The University of Iowa's football team hosts the University of Nebraska Cornhuskers. 18-year-old hero Austin Benson award by the American Red Cross of Greater Iowa. In July, Benson came to friend Rachel Riley's aid after she was thrown from her horse. The animal rolled over, causing a saddle horn to puncture her leg. Austin Benson was hurt. Saved Riley's life. There's a winter weather advisory for portions of north central Iowa and northeastern Iowa today with periods of snow, highs 26 to 36. This is Iowa Public Radio News. I'm Clay Masters.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from eSurance with Coverage Counselor, an online tool that uses driver info to provide car insurance coverage options at eSurance.com. Welcome to the modern world. From the John P. and Keegan T. MacArthur Foundation.
From NPR News, I'm David Green.
And I'm Renee Montaigne. Good morning. Hundreds more Missouri National Guard troops were patrolling the streets of Ferguson last night. It helped. Protests continued, but with much less violence than on Monday night. That deployment follows criticism that both the town and the state should have been better prepared for the outburst of anger and rioting that followed the announcement on Monday that a grand jury would not indict the police officer who shot and killed a young African-American man. St. Louis Public Radio's Tim Lloyd reports.
Let's start on Monday of last week. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has just issued a state of emergency and activated the Missouri National Guard. During the call with reporters, he's asked if the buck stops with him when it comes to how protesters will be handled by police.
Well, our goal is to keep the peace, but allow all voices to be heard.
Nixon stumbles through the rest of the answer.
I prefer not to be a commentator on it. I'm making decisions to make sure that we're all prepared for all contingencies.
At a press conference the next day, Nixon says he's ultimately in charge of public safety in the state. Fast forward a week, and fires are still smoldering in Ferguson the morning after some protests turned explosive and violent. Police say heavy gunfire made it too dangerous for firefighters to respond quickly.
What was the guard for, if not to go in and stop that?
That's Missouri's Republican Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, who seldom hesitates to criticize Nixon, a Democrat. Nevertheless, he backed Nixon's move to issue a state of emergency in advance of the grand jury's decision.
Why a governor who had done that, who had taken those proactive steps on the front end, would hold the guard back on the mind of every law-abiding Missouri
not the least of whom is Ferguson Mayor James Knowles, who tried to be diplomatic in his criticism.
The decision to delay the deployment of the National Guard is deeply concerning. We are asking that the governor make available and all necessary resources to prevent further destruction of property and the preservation of life in the city of Ferguson.
Shortly after those comments, Governor Nixon announced he was calling in 1,500 more troops, though some fear that decision embodies a militarized approach that could incite more violence. But David Klinger, a professor of criminology at the University of Missouri St. Louis, says that's not the biggest issue here.
They are not people on sides of the divide that want to make things work for peaceful protest. All of the discussions, all of the meetings, and all of the goodwill can be for naught if you've got these bad actors that want to act badly.
And the planning and discussions in the run-up to the grand jury's decision were exhaustive. Protesters held countless training events for nonviolence and conflict resolution. Politicians and religious leaders made repeated calls for peace. Protesters and the police were even able to agree on some guidelines for demonstrations. But activists didn't get the heads up they wanted before the decision, which they argued would have helped them mobilize to keep the peace. In the morning after the grand jury's decision, the crumpled up remains of businesses smoldered on West Florissant Avenue in Ferguson. Police blocked off the road as a crowd gathered in the parking lot of Family of Faith Missionary Baptist Church. Rodney Vance lives nearby and is looking at the burnt-out remains of local shops.
People that we depend on, the people that are here to protect us, they don't have our back the way they're supposed to. And I believe that the Guard could have protected firefighters and policemen to get everything under control.
But holding on to control is slippery, and it's quite possible that as long as African-American residents like Rodney Vance feel so deeply disenfranchised, trust will become another casualty here. For NPR News, I'm Tim Lloyd in St. Louis.
And let's hear now from one member of the Ferguson community. Steve Sullivan runs Provident. It's a network of counseling and crisis centers in the St. Louis area that covers Ferguson. Sullivan wrote in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that things will only get better if people work to understand the other side, whatever that might be. Mr. Sullivan is on the line with us. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here.
So you've lived in the St. Louis area, including Ferguson, most of your whole life, is that right?
That's right. I spent probably the first 30-plus years of my life in North County, Ferguson.
And we're seeing these violent images coming from a community that you know so well. As you see this playing out, what do you think about it?
Well, you know, we don't like how Ferguson looks to the world these days, but I really see some positive energy coming out of this. You know, right now we're still in these violent times. We're seeing a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming, but there is an undertow of positive energy coming out of this that I think will survive for the long term.
Tell me how you see that positive energy, because, you know, what we see in the television images, it's so difficult to see that as an outsider right now.
You know, I'm a member of the Urban League as well, and in the first week following the Michael Brown incident, I spent a day down in Canfield Green with the Urban League, the apartment complex where Michael Brown was shot. And first of all, it was a very loving experience. There was no hate, there was no anger. It was a community coming together even in those days. But as the young men came out of the apartments, what we heard was the need for some economic opportunities, for some jobs. And I'll tell you, although this hasn't made the headlines nationally, we've got some fine St. Louis companies like Centene that's already announced it's going to start a call center in Ferguson. Emerson Electric has come through with money. Express Scripts is a major U.S. corporation right on the border of Ferguson, and they're all coming to the table to see what they can do to bring jobs into the community. So we're on the right track to healing.
And this is my office, okay?